my name is Ben from Woby Design, and today I'm going to show you how I made this foldable spray and sanding booth. It's only 6 inches off the wall, folds up nicely with these 2 strong gas struts, and it has clear shower curtains that ride on these Rockler ceiling tracks. And it has an exhaust fan. Okay, so let me explain to you my situation. I make things out of recycled skateboards, and I have to sand all these skateboards to prep for glue up. Originally, I wanted to sand these skateboards up in the loft, but the ceiling was way too low for me to be comfortable, so the loft will be strictly for storage. Unlike my previous shops, there's nowhere outside where I could set up to sand. And all that dust is gonna go straight into my neighbor's shop. And I really like him. He has his whole routine going on and I don't wanna mess that up, so sanding outside is not an option.
Sorry.
I'm trying to work here.
I'm gonna pee.
Now, the next best thing to have is some sort of a foldable or collapsible spray booth that I can easily set up and take it down. I recently discovered a YouTube channel called DK's Craft, and that's what kind of inspired me to build my own foldable staircase. And I also watched Glenn from DIY Creators on how he set up his spray booth. So I married those 2 ideas together and came up with my own ideas. Now, instead of selling you plans, I would much rather teach you how to make it so that you could customize it to fit your own needs. So let me show you how I built it and you can make your own necessary improvements. Now, before we begin, let's talk about one of the sponsors of this video, which is Keeps. Did you know 2 out of 3 guys will experience some sort of male pattern baldness by the age they're 35? There's many different contributing factors to your hair loss, and the best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have some hair left. With Keeps, a licensed doctor will review your information online and recommend the right hair loss treatment plan for you. You can message your Keeps doctor 24/7 with any questions or concerns along the way and track your progress with Keeps Progress Tracking Tool. Your FDA approved medication for hair loss will ship directly to your home and it's very affordable. Keeps treatment plan typically take about 4 to 6 months to start seeing results, so it's really important that you act fast. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you can save. Prevention is key to saving your hair. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Woby or click the link in the description below and get 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/Woby. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video. Now, let's start building. Now, in order to support the weight of this booth, I needed to make a beefy mounting bracket to secure it onto the studs. And depending on the spacing of your studs, it will determine how wide you can make this booth. I personally wouldn't make it anything wider than 8 feet. I ripped 4 scraps of 3/4 inch plywood into 5 inches and then cross-cut them into 8 inches. You just need to make sure you have 4 identical sizes. Next, I'm using the bandsaw to cut out a notch. I set the fence 1.5 inches away from the blade. You can also make this cut using a jigsaw as well. Once I had all 4 pieces with the notches cut out, I needed to drill a hole in the center. The dowel I'm using is 1.5 inches, which is actually the leftover from the handrails. So for those of you who's asking where the handrails are, it's there. Next, I drilled 1.5 inch hole on all 4 pieces with the force snippet. Once I had all the holes drilled, I glued 2 pieces together using these Rockler bendy clamps. I checked to make sure the dowel would still fit. I drove in screws to make sure it's nice and sturdy, and then pre-drilled for the bolts and accidentally drilled into my brand new workbench. Once I had the mounting brackets made, I cleared the wall and started looking for the studs. I'm mounting these brackets at 8 feet high on center of the dowel. Depending on how wide you space these brackets, it will determine how wide your frame will be. I'm spacing out about 8 inches to give myself plenty of room inside to be comfortable while I'm sanding or spraying. I'm using bolts to secure these mounting brackets firmly against the studs. And I check to see if it will hold up, and this is usually where I end up hurting myself. Next, I started cutting the strips for the frame. I'm ripping 4 strips that are 5 inches in width for the main frame and 3 strips that are 2 inches in width for stretchers. I measured the inside distance of the mounting brackets minus the thickness of the 2 side strips and maybe a 1/4 inch of wiggle room. I then cross-cut them using a circular saw and added pocket holes on each end. And this is what kind of makes up the frame. Bottom, top sides. Now on the tops of each side strip, I needed to drill the corresponding hole as well as cut out a notch so that the frame will clear when it's folding. I found the center point and used the compass to draw the line to cut out. I used the same Forstner bit to drill out the holes, then cut out the notch with the jigsaw. And I checked to make sure everything worked properly. I can then assemble everything using pocket holes. This clamp it corner clamping jig from Rockler is really handy when it comes to assembling right angle joints. Once it was assembled, I mounted it back on and checked to see how everything was working. The mechanism was working perfectly fine and I expected to have this much wiggle, so I started to add some stretchers. I wanted to keep the frame as light as possible, so I decided to add 2 stretchers, and honestly it felt like it didn't do much. So I added these 45-degree stretchers on all 4 corners and also added some on the sides to mount the Rockler ceiling tracks. Huge shout out to Rockler for sending me all these products. I'm using these Rockler ceiling track system, which comes in 4 feet sections and these corner pieces. It's made out of durable PVC material which can be easily cut with wood cutting tools. They have several different accessories for the ceiling track system, so make sure to check out rockler.com for all your woodworking needs. Thanks, Rockler. I started laying out all the pieces and cut them into length. I then pre-drilled and drove in 3/4 inch screws to secure the ceiling tracks onto the frame. Once the ceiling tracks were in place, I checked again and see if everything was working properly. Everything looked good, so I moved on to installing the gas struts. Now, a lot of you asked where I got these gas struts from, so I'll link them down in the description below and it'll be Amazon affiliate link, so use that link. Now, I'm still not completely sure how to position these gas struts in a way that it works properly. This first time, I actually got the placement correct and I was very happy about it. But later on, you're gonna see me struggle with it, so stay tuned. It's really frustrating. Okay, so let's say I wanna close it. What I have to do, close it all the way this way, all the way this way. Bring it together, bring this out a little bit. I have a little bungee cord right here. There we go. Lift it up. Bada bing, bada boom, baby! Woo! Okay, so here are some problems that I'm having. As you can see on this side, it kind of sags down a little bit. And that's because these gas struts are so strong that it's bending the plates up there, as well as digging into the drywall. So I gotta fix that. Next is this little curtain thing. I don't like this. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put the ceiling track all the way around this frame as well and leave the curtains against this wall, so folding it up and down is not gonna be a problem. So that's good. Another thing is I was gonna put like a sheet of plywood up there, but it's getting way too heavy. So I'm actually using polycarbonate sheets that's completely clear. This white stuff is just protective film. So that's actually gonna allow a ton of light coming in, and I'm actually going to install 3 more American green lights up there, and that's gonna be really lit up, and that's gonna be really good. So, after evaluating the prototype, I came up with a couple of improvements to make this even more efficient. I needed to add a fan, make the gas strut mounts more sturdy, and relocate the ceiling tracks. First, I disassembled the frame. I unscrewed the ceiling tracks and all the stretchers. I'll be covering it up with clear polycarbonate sheets, so I flipped the 45-degree stretchers so that I can hide the pocket holes. I made a simple frame for the box fan. I made sure to give it enough room so that I can add a filter on the back. To be completely honest, I'm not exactly sure how effective this is on cleaning the air quality, or if I should be blowing air out of the booth or into the booth. All I'm hoping for is to move hot air out of the booth so that I'm not suffocating inside the booth. And hopefully it keeps it kind of fairly breezy inside. I made sure to cut a hole for the controller knob and use the 18 gauge pin nailer to assemble them together. I can then reinstall the long stretchers by using the box fan as spacers. I can then use the pin nailer to install the box fan frame onto the main frame. I added a bungee cord to the back to secure the filter onto the frame. It's not really the prettiest, but it gets the job done. I tried to reinstall the booth back onto the brackets, but I installed this power strip from Rockler and it was in the way. So I had to move the power strip down a little and make sure everything was cleared. I then added a couple more stretchers that will work as the mounting plate for the ceiling tracks. I took it back down off the wall and reinstalled the ceiling tracks. And then I put it back on the wall and the power cord for the box fan was just long enough to clear the ceiling tracks. Next, I added the curtains. I inserted these curtain gliders, and since I relocated the ceiling tracks, I can just move all the curtains against the wall and fold down the booth without any extra step. Now, this is probably the most frustrating part of the build, which is installing these gas struts. The first time, the placement was correct, but the top plates kept bending. The bottom brackets also had problems and kept digging into the drywall. And eventually, the whole booth sagged down about 6 inches on the open end. So for the top, I replaced the mounting plate, and for the bottom, I just added a scrap piece of plywood to disperse the weight. Now the bottom was working out great, but the top plate still kept bending, and I eventually found out that I just needed to flip the top plate upside down and it was good to go. Now I should have stopped right here and added a stop on the open end and covered it up with the polycarbonate sheets. But I really wanted to use it without a stop on the open end and try to compensate for the weight when the curtains were fully opened. And here's where the mistakes were made. I tried to reposition the gas struts and mounted it too far out to the top. I repositioned it again and it wouldn't stay closed. And eventually I added another layer of plywood on the bottom bracket and it worked out good enough for me to move on. Should have stopped earlier. I can then finally cover it up with the polycarbonate sheets. I used 2 full sheets and ripped it down with the table saw and a circular saw. And I can finish cutting it with a utility knife. And you know they say, measure twice, cut once. And they say this for a reason. I'm not exactly sure how I messed this up, but I just used 18 gauge pin nailer to attach these sheets, but it's barely hanging on, so I would recommend using some type of stapler instead. I can finish it up by patching up the missing spot, and I can dust it off and call it done. Okay, so here it is. A foldable spray and sanding booth that easily folds out from the wall. These gas struts are strong enough to fold the entire booth up, but I added this hard stop on the open end to get rid of any sag and keep the booth up in case of any gas strut failures. The clear shower curtains are supported by the Rockler ceiling track system all around the booth. I also added this power strip from Rockler against the wall so that I can plug in any power tools as needed. And the combination of these clear polycarbonate sheets and the clear shower curtains lets in a ton of light into the booth. Now, I'm still not too sure how effective this box fan will be, but for now it seems to be removing a lot of the hot air out of the booth and keeps filtering the air out. But according to some people, they said the box fan's gonna explode because there's not enough airflow. I don't know. We'll see. To close the booth, I just need to move all the curtains against the wall and remove the hard stop on the open end. I installed this drawer pull so that I can easily grab it and fold down the booth. And that's how the booth works. Personally, I will use this mainly as a sanding booth. Every single one of these skateboards needs to be sanded before I can make anything out of them. And the best way that I found was to use an angle grinder with a carving disc. This method is probably the fastest way to prep these skateboards for glue up, but the downside is it makes an awful lot of mess. So having this control booth will keep the rest of the shop clean and contain all the dust and mess inside the booth. I'm using this Rockler Material Made panel cart with the Rockler T-Track tabletop as the workbench. And there's so many different accessories for the T-Track system. So I'm still trying to figure out the best way to sand these skateboards so that it will be faster and less messier, so stay tuned. Now, because this booth provides a controlled environment, I think most people will find it useful for spray finishing. Personally, I don't like spraying outside because there's so many contributing factors like the wind, the weather, maybe dust, and even bugs. And I also don't like spraying inside because overspray gets everywhere in the shop. So having this foldable spray booth will have a controlled environment for any kind of project that you're doing, and you can make all the mess you want and it'll be contained in that little booth. Cool, right? So that's it for this video. I want to give a huge shout out to Rockler for sponsoring this video. They have so many different tools to make your woodworking more enjoyable, so make sure to check out rockler.com for all your woodworking needs. And I'll have all the tools that I use from Rockler down in the description below. Thanks, Rockler. So, I hope this video helps you understand how I made it and why it's really useful for my needs. And like I said, I don't have plans for this, but I'd rather teach you how to make it so that you could customize it and then make it even better, and then I could learn from you, and then we could go back and forth. So that's it for this video. This sanding booth was the last big project that I needed to finish up this shop. And after months of working on it, pretty much the shop is done. And the last 6 months has been an emotional roller coaster, and getting this shop together was extremely stressful. But finally, I can start making things out of recycled skateboards. And I just want to thank all my Patreon members for supporting me throughout this whole entire journey. And I really couldn't have made the move without you guys, so thank you so much. And if you like to support, make sure to check out the link down in the description below. If you haven't already, just subscribe! It's not like I'm making so many videos that I'm clogging up your feed. And like this video, I guess the YouTube gods will push this video out to other people and more people get to watch it, and that means I get to keep on doing what I love doing, which is making free content for you. And as always, write a positive and encouraging comments so that I can make my wife proud. Okay? I know it seems like I'm asking a lot, but compared to the days of work that I put in, all you have to do is bang, 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 nice job. So easy. Thanks again. Until next time. Woo!